The hydraulic fluid was still pooling beneath the D8 when I told Marcus to call the rental company. Dark, viscous, spreading across the red Oklahoma clay like a stain I couldn't scrub out of my mind. 48 hours until the county inspector arrived, and our primary excavator was hemorrhaging its lifeblood into the dirt. "We're done," I said, not to anyone in particular, just to the air, thick with July heat and the smell of diesel and failure. Sarah Brennan was standing 20 feet away, her boots planted in that same clay safety vest hanging open over a faded Oklahoma State t-shirt. She'd been our structural engineer for 6 months. Dalton's hire, not mine. She had her phone out, taking pictures of the leak from 3 different angles. "We're not done," she said. Without looking up, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger exactly, something closer to exhaustion mixed with the particular frustration of being contradicted when you're already beaten. "Sarah, the main seal is blown. That's a $15,000 repair and a week minimum at the nearest cat dealer. We don't have either." She lowered her phone. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that hadn't seen a mirror in probably 2 days. There was clay on her forearms, on her jeans, under her fingernails. She looked at me with those grey eyes that always seemed to be calculating something I couldn't see. "I can fix it," she said. Marcus laughed, not cruelly, just reflexively. He was my foreman, had been for 8 years across 4 major projects. Good man, solid instincts. "Sarah, no offense, but this ain't a software problem. That seal requires specialized tools we don't have, parts we can't get in time, and honestly, you don't think I can do it," she finished for him. Her voice was level, no heat in it, that somehow made it worse. I should have said something diplomatic, should have acknowledged her effort, thanked her for trying to help, explained the practical realities of heavy equipment repair. Instead, I was thinking about the $340 dollars we stood to lose if we missed the inspection window, about the 3 other contractors who'd love to see Garrett Construction go belly up, about my daughter's college tuition and my ex-wife's lawyer and the second mortgage I'd taken on the house. "It's not about what I think you can or can't do," I said. "It's about what's realistic in the time we have. We need to pivot. Get the rental unit here by tomorrow morning, work through the night if we have to, and maybe we can still grade enough of the site to pass inspection." Sarah nodded slowly. She slid her phone into her back pocket. "How much is the rental going to cost?" $1,800 a day. "And if it breaks down or gets delayed in transit?" "Then we're screwed." She looked past me, toward the half-finished access road we were cutting through the red dirt hills west of Tulsa. This was supposed to be a straightforward job: widen the county road, improve drainage, add proper shoulders for the new industrial park going in. 6 weeks, in and out, good money. Instead, we'd hit unexpectedly hard bedrock, lost a week to rain, and now this. "Give me until tomorrow morning," Sarah said. "If I can't fix it by then, call your rental." Marcus shifted his weight, glanced at me. The unspoken question was clear. "You really gonna let her waste time we don't have?" "Sarah," I started. "I'm not asking for permission, David." She said it quietly, but there was steel underneath. "I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can help, or you can call your rental company. Either way, I'll be in the shop bay when you decide." She walked past me, toward the corrugated metal building we'd converted into a temporary maintenance shed. Her boots made sucking sounds in the wet clay. Marcus waited until she was out of earshot. "Boss, I know she's smart and all, but that bulldozer is toast. We're talking about a catastrophic seal failure, not changing the oil." "I know," I said. "So we calling the rental?" I watched Sarah disappear into the shed. Through the open bay door, I could see her moving around, pulling tools off the wall, organized, purposeful. She'd been like that since day one, methodical, thorough, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Dalton had brought her on from some big engineering firm in Dallas, said she was the best young structural engineer he'd ever worked with. Said she'd take a pay cut to get field experience, wanted to understand construction from the ground up instead of just pushing drawings across a desk. I remembered the day she'd arrived. Late April, unseasonably cool, the Oklahoma wind whipping across the empty lot where we were breaking ground. She'd shown up in steel-toed boots that looked brand new, carrying a hard hat that still had the price sticker on the inside rim. Marcus had looked at me with barely concealed skepticism. "Another college kid who thinks they know construction because they passed some tests," his expression said. But Sarah hadn't acted like she knew everything. She'd asked questions, good ones. "Why are we starting excavation on the north side instead of the south? What's the soil composition at depth? Have we verified the utility locations independently, or are we trusting the county maps?" Questions that showed she was thinking about the whole system, not just her narrow piece of it. In 6 months, she'd caught 2 major design errors that would have cost us a fortune. The first one was a drainage calculation that the previous engineer, a guy with 20 years' experience, had botched by reversing 2 numbers. Sarah caught it during her first week, stayed late on a Friday night running the numbers 3 different ways to make sure she was right before bringing it to me. Saved us $43,000 and probably a lawsuit when the retention pond would have overflowed during the first major rain. The second error was more subtle. A structural load miscalculation on a retaining wall that would have been fine 90% of the time, but would have failed catastrophically during a heavy rain when the soil was saturated. She'd redesigned the whole thing, added drainage pipes we hadn't budgeted for, and somehow still brought it in under the original estimate by finding cheaper materials that were actually better suited for Oklahoma's clay soil. She'd redesigned our drainage system to save $17,000 in materials, worked longer hours than anyone except me, usually arriving before dawn to check grades while the air was cool and leaving after dark, with her boots caked in red clay. I'd find her notes in the site office, detailed, precise, always thinking about how today's work would affect next week's schedule. But this was different. This was hands-in-the-grease mechanical work on a machine that weighed 34 tons. This was the kind of repair that veteran mechanics approached with caution, the kind of work where one mistake could mean a ruined machine or worse, someone getting hurt. And she wanted to do it alone, on a deadline, with everything on the line. "Call them," I said. "Tell them we might need the D8 tomorrow, but don't commit yet. I'll talk to her." Marcus nodded and pulled out his phone, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He thought I was making a mistake. Maybe I was. I started toward the shed, my boots squelching through the clay. The sun was getting lower now, casting long shadows across the equipment yard. In a few hours it would be dark, and we'd lose even more time. Inside, the air was hotter, stagnant. Sarah had already pulled up the technical manual on her laptop, balanced on a rolling toolbox. She was studying a schematic, her finger tracing lines I couldn't make sense of from where I stood. Her other hand was making notes in a spiral notebook, the same one I'd seen her carry around the site for months, filled with calculations and observations and ideas she never got the chance to implement. "Sarah." She didn't look up. "The hydraulic system on a D8R has 3 potential failure points for that kind of leak: main control seal, priority valve seal, or pump seal. Based on the leak location and the color of the fluid, I'm 90% sure it's the main control seal. Even if you're right, I am right. You still need the replacement part, and the specialized press to install it, and about 12 hours of disassembly." She finally looked at me. There was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not anger exactly, but something harder. Determination mixed with something else. Desperation maybe, or just exhaustion from 6 months of not being fully seen. "I already ordered the seal, overnighted from a supplier in Oklahoma City. It'll be here by 6 a.m. As for the press, I can fabricate something that'll work with the equipment we have. And I don't need 12 hours. I need 8. I felt a strange vertigo, like the ground had shifted slightly under my feet. When did you order the seal? 2 hours ago, when I first saw the leak. Before talking to me. Before you had a chance to tell me it was impossible. She closed her laptop with more force than necessary. Do you want to know what I did after I ordered the seal? I called 3 different mechanics in Tulsa, described the problem, asked their opinion on repair feasibility. All 3 said the same thing. It's possible, it's just expensive and time-consuming. One of them offered to come out and do it for $4,000 plus parts, but he couldn't start until Friday. You did all that without telling me? I was gathering information, making sure I had a viable solution before I proposed it. Isn't that what you always tell us to do? Don't bring me problems. Bring me solutions. She had me there. It was something I said at almost every team meeting, but hearing it turned back on me felt different. Felt like being shown a mirror I didn't particularly want to look into. This isn't just any solution, Sarah. This is a chance for you to actually trust me, she interrupted. To see me as more than just the person who runs the calculations and makes the pretty drawings. I'm good at this, David. Really good. I know you don't see it yet, but I am. The silence stretched between us. Outside, I could hear Marcus on the phone, his voice carrying across the site. A crow called from somewhere in the sparse tree line. The heat was making my shirt stick to my back. Why? I asked. Why are you so determined to fix this yourself? Sarah closed her laptop. She leaned against the toolbox, arms crossed. You want the diplomatic answer or the real one? Real. Because every time something goes wrong on this site, you look at Marcus. Every time you need a second opinion, you look at Marcus. Every time there's a hard decision to make, you and Marcus huddle up and figure it out, and then you tell me what you decided. She paused. I'm not your secretary, David. I'm your structural engineer, and I'm good at what I do. Better than good. I've never said you weren't. You didn't have to say it. You show it every day. She pushed off from the toolbox. Look, I get it. I'm 29 years old. I'm a woman working construction in Oklahoma. I don't have the years of field experience you and Marcus have, but I'm not asking you to believe in me based on nothing. I'm asking you to look at my track record for 6 months and give me 8 hours to prove I can do this. I wanted to argue, wanted to explain that it wasn't about her gender or her age, it was about risk management and practical realities. But standing there in that hot shed, looking at her tired eyes and clay-stained clothes and the determination set in her jaw, I realized she was right about one thing. I had been treating her like a junior member of the team, someone to be protected and managed rather than trusted. If you can't fix it by 7 a.m. tomorrow, I said slowly, we lose the whole day. The rental won't be here in time, and we'll miss the inspection window. I know. That's $340,000. I know. My company, Sarah, my debt, my risk. She nodded. I know. And I'm telling you I can fix it. Not maybe, not probably, I can fix it. I should have said no. Every reasonable part of my brain was screaming to say no, to call the rental company, to go with the safe option. But I looked at this woman who'd spent 6 months proving herself in 100 small ways, who'd never asked for special treatment or made excuses, who was standing there covered in Oklahoma clay and asking for a chance to show what she could really do. Okay, I said. Sarah blinked. Okay. You've got until 7 a.m. You need help? Marcus and I are available. You need tools or materials, tell me. But Sarah, this goes wrong. We all go down together. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw her smile. Not a big smile, just a small upturn at the corners of her mouth. It won't go wrong. She turned back to her laptop, already pulling up parts diagrams. I walked out of the shed into the fading light. Marcus was off the phone, standing next to his truck. What did the rental company say? I asked. They can have a unit here by noon tomorrow. Needs confirmation by 9 p.m. tonight. I looked at my watch. It was almost 6. Tell them we'll confirm by 8 a.m. Marcus's eyebrows went up. You're serious? You're really gonna let her try? Yeah, I said, I am. He shook his head, but he was almost smiling. Your funeral, boss? Maybe it was. But as I stood there watching the sun sink toward the horizon, turning the Oklahoma sky the color of rust and fire, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Not quite hope, not quite confidence, just a small, fragile sense that maybe I'd been wrong about what was possible. I just didn't know yet how wrong I'd been about everything else. By 8 p.m., the temperature had dropped to 92 degrees. Sarah had the entire front end of the D8 disassembled across the shop floor, every bolt and gasket laid out in precise order on a canvas tarp. I'd seen mechanics work before, good ones too, but never with this kind of systematic organization. She'd labeled everything with masking tape and marker, photographed each step of disassembly, measured clearances with calipers I didn't even know we owned. These are from my dad's shop, she said, noticing me looking at the precision tools. He gave them to me when I left for college. Said even if I ended up behind a desk, I should never forget how to measure things properly. She was working on removing a particularly stubborn hydraulic line, one that had probably been on that machine since it rolled off the assembly line. The fitting was corroded, seized by years of heat cycles and Oklahoma weather. You need the impact wrench? I asked. No. Force is the enemy here. If I strip this fitting, we're really done. She applied penetrating oil for the third time, let it sit for 60 seconds, then tried again with a regular wrench. The fitting groaned but held. 5 more minutes. Let the chemistry do its job. It was the kind of patience I'd never had. I was a bulldoze through it kind of person. If something didn't work, apply more force, more speed, more pressure. But Sarah worked differently. She understood that some problems required waiting, required letting the solution develop at its own pace. Marcus brought sandwiches from the truck stop at 9, chicken fried steak for him, grilled chicken for me, and he'd gotten Sarah a burger without asking what she wanted. She looked at it, then at him. I'm actually vegetarian. Marcus's face went red. Oh, hell, Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I should have asked. It's fine. There's probably some chips in the vending machine. Does she? She started to walk toward the office. Wait, I said. I handed her my grilled chicken sandwich. Here, it's not beef. She hesitated. That's yours. I can eat Marcus's chicken fried steak. I'm not picky. She took the sandwich with a small nod of thanks. We ate in relative silence for a few minutes, but it was a different kind of silence than before. More comfortable. Like we were finally seeing each other as actual people, instead of just roles on a job site. Can I ask you something? Marcus said to Sarah. No judgment, just curious. Why vegetarian? My mom grew up on a cattle ranch in Texas, Sarah said between bites. Saw how the animals were treated, decided she couldn't be part of it. Raised me the same way. It's not a political thing for me, just how I grew up. Huh, Marcus said. My family raised cattle for 3 generations. Never thought about it from that angle. Different perspectives, Sarah said with a shrug. Doesn't make either of us wrong. I watched this exchange with interest. Marcus had been skeptical of Sarah from day one, but here he was, asking her questions, actually listening to her answers. Maybe he was changing too, or maybe he just needed to see her doing something he understood, working with her hands, solving a mechanical problem, before he could see her as a peer. By 10, she'd fabricated a makeshift hydraulic press using our floor jack, steel plate, and a section of I-beam. It looked like something from a Mad Max movie, but when she tested it with a piece of scrap steel, the pressure gauge read exactly what the manual called for. That's actually genius, Marcus said, peering at the setup. He got down on his hands and knees to look at how she'd configured the load distribution. The way you've got this I-beam positioned, It's distributing the force evenly across the entire seal surface. That's the idea. The factory press does it with hydraulics, but the principle is the same. Force, surface area, pressure calculation. She showed him the math in her notebook. As long as we maintain between 803, 200 psi and keep the force concentric, the seal will seat properly. Marcus studied her calculations, nodding slowly. You really did grow up in a shop, didn't you? Every summer from age 12 to 18. Then college. Then 5 years in an office, and now here. She wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of grease. Honestly, this is the happiest I've been in years, even covered in hydraulic fluid and working in 90-degree heat. Why? I asked. She looked at me, then at the disassembled bulldozer, then back at me. Because I'm doing something that matters. Something real. In Dallas, I'd spend weeks designing a structural system, send off the drawings, and never see the actual building, never know if my design worked, if the contractors understood my intent, if the thing I created in CAD actually functioned in reality. Here, I see the consequences of every decision. I learn what works and what doesn't. I'm building something, not just drawing pictures of things other people will build. Sarah didn't respond. She was already moving on to the next step, checking measurements, verifying tolerances. Her focus was absolute, almost frightening in its intensity. I stayed. I'm not sure why. Partly to help if she needed it, partly to witness what I was starting to suspect might be either a spectacular success or an equally spectacular disaster. But mostly because watching her work was like watching someone speak a language I'd forgotten I knew. She didn't waste movements, didn't second-guess herself. Every action had purpose, flowed into the next. When she hit a problem, a corroded bolt that wouldn't budge, a gasket that had fused with old heat, she didn't panic or curse or throw tools. She just paused, thought for 30 seconds, then solved it. Around midnight, we hit a serious problem. One of the hydraulic lines had a hairline crack we hadn't noticed before, probably caused by the same stress that blew the seal. It wasn't critical yet, but it would be soon. Sarah stood there staring at it, her jaw tight. We don't have a replacement, she said quietly. That line is proprietary, special alloy, specific bend radius. The supplier in Oklahoma City won't have it. Marcus and I exchanged looks. This was the kind of problem that could kill the whole repair. You can't just patch a hydraulic line that operates at 300 psi. It either works or it catastrophically fails, and catastrophic failure on a bulldozer can kill someone. What are our options? I asked. Sarah pulled out her phone, started making calls. At 12:30 in the morning, she was calling hydraulic shops across Oklahoma, asking about custom line fabrication. Most went straight to voicemail. The ones that answered said they couldn't help on short notice. Then she called someone named Tommy in Amarillo. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. Tommy, it's Sarah Brennan. Yeah, I know what time it is. I need a favor. She described the line, the specs, the bend radius. Can you fabricate it? I know it's a long drive, but I'm desperate here. I could hear a male voice on the other end, couldn't make out the words. Sarah's expression shifted from worried to relieved. Seriously? Tommy, you're a lifesaver. Yeah, I know I owe you. Add it to the list. She gave him the address, thanked him 3 more times, then hung up. He'll be here by 5 a.m. with the line. He's calling in a favor with someone who owes him, getting it bent and crimped tonight. Who's Tommy? Marcus asked. Worked with my dad for 15 years. Taught me how to run a lathe when I was 14. She sat down on an overturned bucket, suddenly looking exhausted. He's driving 4 hours in the middle of the night because I asked. That's the kind of people my dad worked with. The kind of people I want to work with. Around 11, she looked up at me. "Hand me the 3/4 drive ratchet. On the wall, 3rd hook from the left." I got it for her. She used it to break free a housing bolt that had probably been torqued by someone with a 3-foot breaker bar. "You've done this before," I said. It wasn't a question. My dad ran a heavy equipment repair shop in Amarillo. I spent every summer from age 12 to 18 in that shop. Changed my first transmission when I was 14. She paused, wiping sweat from her forehead. "But I went to college for engineering, not mechanics. My dad said I was too smart to spend my life knuckle-deep in grease. He wanted me to design things, not just fix them." "He was right," I said. "Was he?" She looked at me. "Because I think maybe the best engineers are the ones who've had their hands inside the machines, who know what actually breaks and why, who understand that a beautiful design means nothing if it can't be maintained in the field by normal people with normal tools." She went back to work. I found myself thinking about my own father, who'd taught me construction by dragging me to job sites every summer, who died when I was 26, leaving me a failing company and a reputation I'd spent 15 years trying to rebuild. "My dad didn't think I could run the company," I said. Not sure why I was talking, but the words came anyway. Maybe it was the late hour, the intimacy of working together in the dim shop light, the shared vulnerability of fighting against time and mechanical failure. Told my uncle I was too impulsive, too emotional. Said I needed another 10 years under someone else before I'd be ready. Sarah was cleaning a valve housing with solvent, but I could tell she was listening. He died 3 months later, heart attack at a job site. And suddenly I had 42 employees and $500,000 in debt, and everyone watching to see if the old man had been right. Was he? Almost. I made every mistake you could make the first 5 years. Lost good people, lost money, almost lost everything twice. Had to sell equipment, had to lay off crews I'd promised job security. Had to call my ex-wife's father and ask for a loan, which pretty much guaranteed the divorce. I sat down on the tool chest, but I learned, adapted, got more cautious, more careful, started treating every decision like it could sink the company, because it could. Sarah set down the valve housing. "Is that what I am to you? A decision that could sink the company?" The question hit harder than I expected. That's not what I meant. But it's true though, isn't it? You see me as a risk factor. Young engineer, unproven in the field, might make a costly mistake. Safer to limit my exposure, keep me on the design side, let Marcus handle the real work. That's not... I stopped. Because it was true. Or at least partially true. You're right. I have been treating you like a liability instead of an asset. Why? I sat down on a tool chest, suddenly tired. Because I'm 43 years old, and I'm scared all the time. Scared of losing the company, losing my house, letting down the 26 people who depend on me for their paychecks. And when you're scared, you stop taking chances. You stop trusting new people, new methods, new ideas. You just hunker down and try to survive. Sarah nodded slowly. She picked up a clean rag, started wiping down the valve assembly. My dad died 2 years ago. Lung cancer. He spent his whole life in that shop, breathing in metal dust and solvent fumes and diesel exhaust. Worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years, and you know what he told me at the end? I shook my head. He said he was proud I became an engineer, but he was sad I'd stopped working with my hands. Said he thought I'd find a way to do both, use my brain and my hands, build things and fix them, design with reality in mind. She looked at me. That's why I took this job. Not for the money, not for the career advancement, because Dalton promised me I could get my hands dirty, learn how things really work, be more than just a person who makes drawings that other people have to interpret. And have you gotten what you wanted? She smiled, but it was sad around the edges. I've learned a lot about how things work, and a lot about how people work, about how hard it is to earn trust when you don't look like what people expect, about how exhausting it is to constantly prove yourself when other people get the benefit of the doubt. I felt shame settle over me like a weight. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just do better. She went back to work. Now hand me the torque wrench. The seal should be here in 7 hours, and I still have about 4 hours of prep work before I can install it. I handed her the wrench. Then I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. Get back to the site. Sarah's going to need help through the night. He arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and donuts and a resigned expression. But once he saw the precision of Sarah's work, the methodical way she'd broken down the problem, his skepticism started to shift into something else. Respect, maybe, or at least recognition. We worked through the night. Sarah directed, explained, showed us what needed to happen and why. It wasn't that she needed our help. She could have done it alone. But she let us in anyway. Let us be part of it. By 5 a.m., everything was ready. The housing was cleaned, inspected, measured. The makeshift press was calibrated and tested. The old seal was removed, the surfaces prepared. All we needed was the new seal. The delivery truck arrived at 5:48 a.m., 12 minutes early. Sarah signed for the package, opened it carefully, inspected the seal under the shop lights. "Perfect," she said. Her voice was hoarse from hours of talking and breathing dust and solvent fumes. Installing the seal took 90 minutes. Sarah worked with steady hands, checking measurements 3 times, using the improvised press with the confidence of someone who'd done the calculations and knew exactly what would happen. Marcus and I assisted, holding components, handing tools, watching the pressure gauges. At 7:22 a.m., she torqued the final bolt to spec. At 7:35, we lowered the bulldozer's blade back onto the ground. At 7:48, Sarah climbed into the cab, said a prayer I don't think she knew I could hear, and turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life with a sound that felt like vindication. No leak, no smoke. The hydraulic pressure held steady at exactly where it should be. Sarah sat there in the cab for a long moment, hands on the controls, eyes closed. Then she climbed down, walked over to where Marcus and I were standing and said, "We have 6 hours until the inspector arrives. Better get to work." Marcus laughed. A real laugh, full of relief and something like joy. I wanted to say something profound, something that captured what I was feeling. Instead, I just nodded and said, "Yeah, better get to work." But as Sarah walked past me toward the site office, probably to grab her surveying equipment, I saw her hands. They were shaking, just slightly, just enough to notice. She'd been scared too. This whole time, underneath that calm competence and quiet determination, she'd been just as terrified as I was. Maybe more, because she wasn't just risking money or reputation. She was risking the trust I'd finally barely given her, and she'd proven worthy of it anyway. I should have felt relieved, should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt something closer to shame, because I realized that Sarah had never needed to prove herself. She'd been proving it for 6 months, in 100 different ways, and I'd just been too afraid to see it. Too afraid to see a lot of things. The county inspector arrived at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. His name was Jim Holstead, 62 years old, 3rd-generation civil engineer, and notorious for failing contractors who tried to cut corners. I'd dealt with him on 4 previous projects. He was fair but exacting, the kind of man who measured everything twice and trusted nothing. He stepped out of his county truck wearing pressed khakis and a polo shirt, with the county seal embroidered on the chest. His clipboard was already out, pen clipped to the top. He surveyed the site with the expression of a man who'd seen every shortcut and corner-cutting technique ever invented and wasn't impressed by any of them. "David," he said, shaking my hand with a grip that was still firm despite his age. "Jim, thanks for coming out. Let's see what you've got." No small talk, never was with Halstead. He believed in efficient use of time and saw pleasantries as wasted motion. He walked the site for 90 minutes, taking notes, checking grades with a laser level he'd brought himself, testing drainage with actual water he poured from a 5-gallon bucket, examining our compaction work by digging into the road base with a soil probe. Sarah followed him with her tablet, pulling up engineering drawings when he asked questions, explaining our design decisions with the kind of technical precision that made even Halstead nod approvingly. I watched them work together, Sarah and this old-school engineer who'd probably failed more contractors than he'd passed. She didn't talk down to him or try to dazzle him with technical jargon. She spoke his language, clear, precise, backed up by data and calculations. When he questioned a drainage angle, she showed him the hydrology report and the rainfall data she'd used. When he asked about soil compaction, she had the test results from 3 different locations, all exceeding spec. "Your retention basin design is unusual," Halstead said, standing at the edge of the excavated area. "Most contractors would have just cut a simple depression. This has actual engineering behind it." "Thank you," Sarah said. "The goal was to create a system that wouldn't just hold water temporarily, but would actually improve drainage year-round. The graduated slopes allow for natural settling while maintaining structural integrity. The vegetation plan we've specified will stabilize the soil and actually enhance water absorption over time." Halstead was quiet for a moment, studying the basin. Then he made a note on his clipboard. I couldn't see what he wrote, but his expression had shifted slightly. Not quite approval, but something close to professional respect. "You design this yourself?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Based on similar systems I studied in Texas and New Mexico, but adapted for Oklahoma soil conditions and rainfall patterns." "How long you been doing this kind of work?" "Field engineering, about 6 months. But I've been studying drainage systems and structural engineering for 7 years, and I grew up around heavy construction." Halstead looked at me. "She always this thorough?" "Always," I said. "Huh." He moved on to inspect the road surface. By 3:30, he was standing next to the bulldozer, the one Sarah had resurrected from what should have been mechanical death. He ran his hand along the blade housing, looking at something I couldn't see. "This, the D8 that had the hydraulic failure." I glanced at Sarah. She stepped forward. "Yes, sir. Main control seal blew 2 days ago. We replaced it last night." "Who did the work?" "I did." Halstead turned to look at her properly for the first time. "You're the structural engineer, Brennan?" "Yes, sir." "You did a hydraulic seal replacement on a D8 bulldozer yourself?" "Yes, sir, with assistance from David and Marcus for the heavy components, but I planned and executed the repair." Halstead's expression was unreadable. "That's unusual." "I grew up in my father's heavy equipment repair shop in Amarillo. I've been working on Cat machinery since I was 12. The seal replacement was textbook. Remove the failed component, clean and inspect the housing, install the new seal to manufacturer specifications using proper pressure application. The work was completed at 7:35 this morning, and the machine has been operational for over 6 hours with no loss of hydraulic pressure." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he walked around the bulldozer, checking the hydraulic lines, looking for leaks, examining the work with the eye of someone who knew what to look for. I held my breath, wondering if he'd find some fault, some reason to question the repair. "Show me the pressure readings," he said finally. Sarah pulled out her phone, brought up a photo of the pressure gauge. "Taken this morning after initial startup, then again every hour. All readings within normal operating range." Halstead studied the photos, zooming in on the gauge faces. "And the old seal? You document the failure?" "Yes, sir." She swiped through more photos. The failed seal, the damaged surfaces, the cleaned housing, each step of the installation process. I also have the manufacturer's technical manual with the specified procedures, which I followed exactly. Halstead looked at me again. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Not skepticism anymore. Something else. You let your structural engineer repair your primary excavation equipment in the middle of a deadline-critical project. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, why? Because she asked me to trust her, because I was desperate, because something in me recognized that she knew what she was doing, even if I couldn't admit it to myself. Because she's the most competent engineer I've ever worked with, I said instead, and I should have trusted her judgment sooner than I did. Something shifted in Halstead's expression, not quite a smile, but close. He turned back to Sarah. Show me your drainage calculations for the Eastern Retention Basin. They walked away together, talking technical specifications and flow rates and soil permeability coefficients. I stood there next to the bulldozer, feeling like I'd passed some kind of test I hadn't known I was taking. Marcus came up beside me. He's gonna pass us, isn't he? Yeah, I said. He is. Because of her. Yeah. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I've been doing this for 22 years. Worked under your daddy, now work under you. And I gotta tell you, David, I've never seen anyone like her. The way she thinks, the way she solves problems. It's different. Better, maybe. I know. You gonna tell her that? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Dalton, my business partner. The man who'd brought Sarah onto the team in the first place. Tell me you made the inspection window, he said. No preamble. We're finishing up now. Looks good. Jesus, I thought we were done. When you called yesterday about the bulldozer, I started making calls to see how fast we could liquidate equipment. I felt a wave of anger at him for giving up so fast, at myself for not telling him about Sarah's plan. We fixed it. How? I thought the rental company couldn't get a machine there in time. We didn't use a rental. Sarah repaired the original bulldozer. Silence on the other end. Then, Sarah? Your structural engineer, Sarah? Yes? David, what the hell were you thinking? If that repair failed, if something went wrong during inspection, but it didn't. She fixed it, Dalton, fixed it perfectly. We're passing inspection because she spent 13 hours straight pulling apart and rebuilding a 34-ton bulldozer, and she did it better than any mechanic I've ever seen. More silence. I could picture him in his office in Oklahoma City, rubbing his temples the way he did when he was stressed. Okay, that's incredible. But Jesus, David, you could have told me. I've been having panic attacks all day. I know, I'm sorry. I should have kept you in the loop. Yeah, you should have. A pause. She really fixed it herself? Yeah. Huh. I knew she was good, but... Huh. I watched Sarah and Halstead by the retention basin, Sarah gesturing to show water flow patterns, Halstead nodding along. She's better than good. She's exceptional, and I've been treating her like a liability. Have you? Dalton's voice was careful. Or have you been treating her the way you treat everyone until they prove themselves? Because that's kind of your thing, David. You don't trust easily. He was right, but it felt different with Sarah. I trust Marcus. You've known Marcus for 15 years. You knew his daddy. You went to his daughter's wedding. That's not trust, that's familiarity. I thought about that. About the difference between trusting someone because you know them and trusting someone because they've earned it. About how I'd given Marcus chances I'd never given Sarah, opportunities to lead and decide and sometimes even fail, because I'd known him long enough to see him as fully human, flawed, capable, worthy of trust despite his mistakes. I need to do better, I said. Yeah, Dalton agreed. You do. But recognizing it is a start. We talked for a few more minutes about the inspection, about next steps. about the relief of not having to liquidate equipment to cover our losses. When I hung up, Halstead and Sarah were walking back toward me. "Preliminary approval," Halstead said, handing me a clipboard. "I'll have the official certification by end of week, but barring any unforeseen issues, you're clear to proceed to the next phase." I shook his hand, feeling $340,000 worth of relief wash over me. "Thank you, Jim." "Don't thank me. Thank your engineer. Her drainage design is the best work I've seen in 5 years." He nodded to Sarah. "You ever get tired of field work, give me a call. County engineering department could use someone with your skills." He left in his truck, kicking up red dust. Sarah and I stood there in the afternoon heat, exhausted, filthy, successful. "You did it," I said. "We did it," she corrected. "You, me, Marcus, the whole team." "No, you did the impossible part. You fixed the bulldozer. You designed the drainage system. You handled Halstead. I just stood around doubting you until you proved me wrong." Sarah pulled off her hard hat, ran a hand through her hair. It was matted with sweat, stuck to her forehead. She looked exhausted, triumphant, but exhausted. "David, can I tell you something?" "Yeah." "I wasn't sure I could fix it. When I said I was 90% sure, I was being optimistic. It was more like 75%, maybe 70. She looked at the bulldozer. "But I knew if I didn't try, you'd never see me as anything other than the junior engineer, the woman who was good at calculations but couldn't handle the real work. And I couldn't live with that, with being so much less than what I'm capable of." "You risked everything to prove a point?" "No, I risked everything to be seen. There's a difference." She looked at me, and for the first time I saw actual anger in her eyes. Not the calm, controlled frustration she'd shown before. Real anger. "You know what the hardest part of this job has been? Not the technical work, not the long hours or the physical demands or even the heat and the clay and the dirt. It's being invisible. Having good ideas that get attributed to Marcus, making suggestions that get ignored until you say the exact same thing 10 minutes later, working twice as hard to get half the credit." I felt the shame again, deeper this time. "I did that. I made you invisible. You and everyone else I've ever worked with." Her voice wasn't loud, but there was steel underneath. "I don't think you even realized you were doing it. It's just how things work, how they've always worked. The men on the team get the benefit of the doubt. They get to make mistakes and be forgiven, get to have bad days, get to be human. But me, I have to be perfect every single day. One mistake and I'd confirm every doubt, every bias, every reason you had to not trust me." We stood there in silence. Somewhere across the site, the crew was laughing about something, normal workday sounds, but nothing felt normal. Everything felt exposed, raw. "I'm sorry," I said, "for all of it. For doubting you, for marginalizing you, for not seeing what was right in front of me, for making you feel like you had to risk everything just to be recognized." Sarah nodded slowly. Okay. I'd expected. I don't know. Anger, maybe. Or relief. Or at least some acknowledgement of how much I was trying to make this right. "What do you want me to say, David? That it's fine? That 6 months of being invisible doesn't matter because you apologized?" She shook her head. "I appreciate the apology. Really, I do. But apologies don't change structures. Don't change how things work. Tomorrow, we'll be back on site, and I'll still be fighting to be heard. Still be proving myself while Marcus gets the benefit of the doubt. Still be wondering if every decision you make is influenced by seeing me as less capable than I actually am." The truth of it hit like a physical blow, because she was right. Apologizing was easy. Actually changing how I saw her, how I saw all the women who'd tried to work in this industry and been pushed out by 1,000 small acts of dismissal. That was hard. "Then what do I do? How do I fix this? You don't fix it, you change it. You change how you see me, how you treat me, how you include me in decisions. You check your assumptions every single day, and you do the hard work of treating me like the professional I am, even when your instincts tell you to protect me or doubt me or exclude me. She looked at me straight on. Can you do that? Could I? Could I undo years of instinct, decades of unconscious bias, the comfortable patterns of working with people who looked and thought and acted like me? Could I recognize every time I was about to dismiss her input, every time I was about to attribute her work to someone else, every time I was about to make a decision without her input? It felt overwhelming, impossible almost. But then I thought about her spending 13 hours in that shop, pulling apart a bulldozer on faith and skill and desperate hope. Thought about her standing up to me when I'd been ready to give up. Thought about all the ways she'd already proven herself, and all the ways I'd failed to see it. I can try, I said. That's all I'm asking. Try. Screw up sometimes, but keep trying. She put her hard hat back on and walked toward her truck. I watched her go. This woman who'd saved my company and asked for nothing but the chance to be seen. Marcus came over, wiping his hands on a rag. That was some serious work she did. Yeah. You gonna make her a partner? I looked at him sharply. What? Come on, David. You're not stupid. She just saved our asses. Proved she's got skills beyond what we're paying her for and showed leadership under pressure. That's partner material. And you know Dalton's been talking about bringing in a third partner for years. She's only been with us 6 months. So, you made me foreman after 4 months, said I'd prove myself, showed I could handle pressure. What's she got to do that she hasn't already done? I didn't have an answer for that, or rather I had several answers, and none of them were good enough. She's too young, too inexperienced in business, doesn't have enough years in the field, all excuses, all bullshit. I'll think about it, I said. Marcus gave me a look. You do that. He headed toward his truck, then turned back. And David, stop thinking so much. That woman just spent 13 hours rebuilding a bulldozer by hand to save your company. If that's not partner material, I don't know what is. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing something and acting on it are different things. And as I stood there in the Oklahoma heat, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon, I realized the hardest part wasn't going to be admitting I was wrong. It was going to be having the courage to actually change. 3 weeks later, we finished the county road project 2 days early and $8,000 under budget. Halstead sent a letter to the county commissioners praising the quality of our work, specifically mentioning innovative drainage design and exemplary project management. 2 new contracts came in based on his recommendation, one for a bridge repair, another for a municipal parking lot expansion. I spent those 3 weeks watching Sarah in a new way. Not suspicious, not protective, just observant, actually seeing her instead of looking past her. Watching how she moved through the site, how she interacted with the crew, how she solved problems I didn't even know we had. The first week, I noticed how she'd start her day. She'd arrive before dawn, walk the entire site with a flashlight and measuring tape, checking grades and drainage while the air was still cool. She'd take notes in that spiral notebook, compare them to the previous day's measurements, identify trends before they became problems. One morning, I found her at 5:30 a.m. restaking a section of road because the overnight moisture had caused the clay to shift by 3/4 of an inch. Not enough that anyone else would have caught it, but enough that it would have been off-spec by the time we paved. "How'd you know to check?" I asked her. She looked up from her work, surprised to see me there so early. The humidity last night was 87%. Oklahoma clay absorbs moisture, swells, shifts. I've been tracking the correlation between overnight humidity and morning grade variation. When it's over 80%, I check critical grades before the crew starts. You've been tracking humidity. For 2 months, built a predictive model. She showed me a spreadsheet on her phone, columns of data, regression analysis, correlation coefficients. I can predict grade shift within a quarter-inch now, based on weather conditions, saves us time, reduces rework. She'd been doing this for 2 months, building systems, improving processes, making us better. And I'd never noticed because I'd never really been watching. She caught our concrete supplier overcharging by 4%, not on purpose, just a calculation error that had been running for months. Saved us $1,800 and got the supplier to refund the overcharges retroactively, bringing back another $4,000. Redesigned our equipment rotation schedule to reduce fuel costs by $1,200 a month by analyzing usage patterns and optimizing routes. Mentored 2 of our younger engineers through complex calculations they'd been struggling with, spending her lunch hours in the site office with whiteboard markers and infinite patience, teaching them not just the answers, but how to think through the problems. Did it all without fanfare, without asking for recognition. But I saw it. And more importantly, I made sure everyone else saw it too. In the Monday morning meetings, I started saying, Sarah designed this solution, instead of we found a solution. When clients called with questions, I'd say, let me get Sarah on the line. She designed this system and can explain it better than I can. When Marcus and I discussed strategy, I made sure Sarah was in the room, her voice given equal weight, her suggestions taken as seriously as his. Small changes, incremental, but I watched something shift in the team dynamics. One afternoon, I overheard 2 of the younger crew members asking Sarah about proper grade calculation. Not Marcus, not me, Sarah. Because they'd seen her catch errors, seen her fix problems, seen her get results. She was becoming the go-to person not because of her title, but because of her demonstrated competence. Marcus noticed it too. She's good with the young guys, he said one afternoon. Patient, explains things clearly, doesn't make them feel stupid for asking questions. Yeah, I agreed. I was wrong about her, he said. At first, thought she was just another college kid who'd wash out after 6 months. But she's the real deal. Probably going to be running her own company in 5 years if we don't find a way to keep her. That conversation stuck with me. The idea of losing Sarah, of watching her take everything she'd learned here and build something better somewhere else. It felt wrong, wasteful, like watching someone develop a cure for cancer and then throwing it away because you didn't recognize what you had. On a Thursday afternoon in early August, I called her into the site office. Dalton was on speakerphone from Oklahoma City. I'd spent the previous 3 days going over the numbers, talking to our lawyer, making sure the offer was solid and fair and wouldn't bankrupt us if things went sideways. Sarah sat down, looking wary. She'd been called into the office for good news and bad news enough times to know that formal meetings could go either way. Is something wrong? No, I said. Nothing's wrong. In fact, we wanted to talk to you about something that's very right. I slid a folder across the desk. She opened it, scanned the first page, then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, maybe. Or disbelief. Or the careful neutrality of someone who's been disappointed before and is protecting themselves. Partnership papers? Dalton's voice came through the phone. We'd like to offer you a 10% equity stake in Garrett Construction. Full partner status, voting rights, profit sharing, the whole package. You'd be our structural engineering lead, but also part of the strategic decision-making team. Equal voice in major business decisions, project selection, hiring, all of it. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She turned pages slowly, reading the terms carefully. I could see her engineering mind working, calculating, analyzing the implications. This is generous, more than generous, she said finally. 10% equity is worth what? $300,000 at current valuation? $340, Dalton said. We had an independent appraisal done last month for insurance purposes. And you're offering it to me after 6 months. We're offering it to you because you've earned it, I said, and because you're worth it. You saved this company, Sarah. Not just the Bulldozer, not just this project. You've saved us millions in court errors, design improvements, operational efficiency. But more than that, you've shown leadership, vision, the ability to see solutions where the rest of us just see problems. Plus, Dalton added, you're the best engineer I've ever hired, and I'll be damned if some other company poaches you because we were too stupid to recognize your value. We've already had 3 firms try to recruit you. Did you know that? They've been calling me, asking about you making offers, good offers. Sarah's eyebrows went up. I didn't know that, because I didn't tell you. Thought I could keep you by just being a good boss. But Marcus made me realize that's not enough. You're too talented, too valuable. Someone's eventually going to make you an offer we can't match unless we make you a partner now. She smiled at that. But there was something careful in her expression, something guarded. Can I ask you something honestly? Of course, I said. Is this because I'm good at my job, or because you feel guilty about how you treated me? The question landed like a punch. Dalton cleared his throat uncomfortably on the phone. I saw him shift in the video window. He'd turned on his camera now, wanted Sarah to see his face when he answered. Both, I said after a moment, deciding on brutal honesty. I do feel guilty. I treated you like you were less capable, less valuable, less worthy of trust than you actually are. I made assumptions based on your age and your gender and my own insecurities. And I can't undo that. But this offer isn't about assuaging my guilt. It's about building the company we need to be. And we need you as a partner, not just an employee. David's right, Dalton said, leaning toward his camera. We've been talking about bringing in a 3rd partner for 2 years. We have a list of candidates, people with 20 years experience, impressive resumes, connections in the industry. But none of them would have fixed that bulldozer. None of them would have caught those design errors. None of them have your combination of technical skill, practical knowledge, and leadership ability. And frankly, none of them would have had the guts to bet everything on their own abilities the way you did. Sarah looked at the papers again, her finger tracing down the columns of numbers. What about Marcus? He's been with you longer, 15 years. This has to sting for him. Sarah is offered a partnership after proving her competence by fixing the bulldozer, even as the narrator admits that had she failed, his biases might have confirmed his doubts. After careful consideration, Sarah accepts, with conditions, mentorship for women, transparent leadership, equal decision-making power, and the freedom to challenge him when he slips into old patterns. Their agreement becomes an honest reckoning with past prejudice and fear. Sarah makes clear that she didn't succeed to prove him wrong, but to prove herself right. The narrator commits to becoming a partner who sees her clearly, not through assumption, but through trust earned by action. Together they rebuild not just a machine, but a company culture, one meant to last, to open doors for others, and to make competence the standard rather than the exception. What begins with a broken bulldozer becomes a shared future built on accountability, equality, and hard-earned respect.